Lily, I'm gonna let you present today. So here how it goes. Okay, it goes like we just say. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is the 0 to Hero program.
All right, Oleksandr, it's all you now.
Okay. Let me share my screen. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So, today we're gonna talk about, so I'm skipping all about me because you know who I am, hopefully, from the last session. So today we will continue with API a bit. So we will talk about when to use and a bit of shortcomings and downfall, when not to use, and things just that you need to remember. Then we also talk about one topic that I missed last time because there was definitely no time for that. But we will talk about how you can create multiple records with one call if they are related through the thing called deep insert, and some things that you need to know on how to use it. And the second part will be on site settings and snippets. We will talk about the less frequent or little known one. We will talk, I will show you a couple of really useful ones, where you can find them, how you can use them, and how generally you can find them, etc. So, okay, let's start with WebAPI, and let's start with talking about some things when we want to use it and when we don't want to use it. So last time I presented a good scenario with contact us form, right? It's small, it's reliable, it's pretty good. But if you just create it as we did, just simple fields and just submit, you are omitting a couple of things that the standard form will have that you need to remember about. So one of the things that standard form has advantage over the ones that we created is that the system adds validation by itself based on the field type. So what I mean by that is, for example, we have an email field, right? And in the system, it was created as an email type. So the system automatically will add a validation. But for our form, it's just a super basic one. We didn't add any validation, so any value is valid. So if I will type something like test123 and go with a message, hello, this one will work as well, right? We don't have any validation. But if we go to the contact us page that I created, which is basically just a simple page with the standard entity form, which has the same fields as we have before, name, email, and message. So let's try to type the same thing here. So test123, and hello, and hit submit. Now, this not going to work because the system handles validation for a standard field. So as you can see, email must be a valid email address. So one of the things that you need to always remember when you're creating those custom forms with WebAPI is to add validation. You need to remember about it. It's might not be as complicated as the standard validation, but you need to have it. The other thing is that you need to remember is that you might receive an expected error. Let's say, for example, our name would be like 10 symbols long, and we set the length of that field for 10 symbols. And during the test with WebAPI, we use just the short names. It would work as expected. If we would type 11 characters and hit submit via WebAPI, we would receive an error that will be prevented by the form, which will enforce it. So in general, rule of thumb that I like to follow in my project is basically, if I can use entity form, basic form as it's called right now, I will use it. So WebAPI is to extend functionality. Of course, like for a snippet or widget that we see before, it's ideal scenario. If we want that one, nothing beats WebAPI. Just don't forget about the limitations that these type of validation need to be included by you and controlled by you. Also, I would say that, I understand that as a developer, I like to control things. And one of the things that I saw as an opportunity when WebAPI just came in is to replace some long loading advanced forms that have complicated web steps, etc., with a WebAPI, which again works great. But you need to remember that it's always cost about maintaining and extending something from scratch and building it. Because, you know, when you build, you control a lot of things, but you need to remember much more things. So just be aware of it and be careful when you build things, because, you know, this type of things, you get used to it, but with Web API, it might not be as easy as it thought. Okay, now let's talk about creation. And let's go back to the slide and okay. We can create related records in the system. And this is example from Microsoft's Portal Web API documentation. So you can create a related record in a nested form. So in this example, they are not just creating an account, right? They are creating a primary contact for it, but also they are creating an opportunity through the relationship opportunity / customer / accounts, and where they are passing an array, which is an array of objects which are opportunities associated to sample account, and then they are also created a nested task for this opportunity. So as you can see, it allows you to create more complicated creation scenarios because you can pass the relationship like this. And let's take some more practical example. So I created a new entity that is called course session task. And basically, let's say that we want, for every course session that we create, we want to create some course session task. For example, initial assignment or something like that, right? And this course session task has a lookup to course session and a lookup to a student. So we can see it in our system and we can see what will be assigned. And in this example, we will extend the previous logic that we built for attend button to see how it works and what we need to do and know. So first of all, obviously, we need to make sure that our related entity is also enabled for the Web API, because it will be created through Web API functionality, so it also needs to be enabled. And the fields that you are passing also need to be enabled. So if you, for example, try to create as in standard example from Microsoft, if you are trying to create opportunity related to account, you need to make sure that opportunity is enabled for Web API. And more importantly, the fields on the opportunities that you are populating are also enabled. So in this example for course session task, I already enable it. So if we go to site settings and we will search for the Web API, we will see that my course session entity task is enabled. And also I pass the main fields, right? Here, course session, name, and student. Straightforward so far, nothing complicated. So let's go to our portal. And again, I will be using Visual Studio Code because it's just a bit easier. But again, you can just do the same changes inside the portal management app. Now I will make code bigger. Is this big enough, or you would like to see it bigger? Victor, how does it look for you? Can somebody hear me?
Sorry, say that again.
Is code big enough, or should I make it bigger?
It is big enough for me. I can see it well. I'm not sure about other folks. Can everybody see it? Maybe give us a thumbs up if you're able to see it.
It's good enough.
Yes, as older man, I can see it also.
I can see it, and I've got really
All right.
awful
Okay.
eyes, right?
Okay, so this is the code that we had previously, basically attend course, that's which will create our course session. Now we want to extend it and being able to create related data. Now, first of all, we need to know the name of the relationship between those entities and where we can find it. So we will go back to our PowerApps and we will go to our course session entity. And we will go to relationships. And here we need to find the related table, which in this case is course session task. And this is our relationship. So here, course session task, course session here. This one will be used to create related records. So we are copying it and we are going here. And we are adding this one. So this is an array of possible values, and we will create a new object, which will be our hero course session task. Okay, so our course session task has a name. So let's say we want to call it initial task. And one of the important things that you need to remember is because we are using related records, you don't need to specify the course session because, obviously course session will be created and it will be automatically populated. However, you do need to specify any other lookup not related to this relationship. In this case, we want to populate the student, which I will just copy from here and change because I changed the schema name on the course session. So looks like it's good to go, right? Well, not really. One of the things that Microsoft documentation doesn't mention and that you need to be aware of, and I would like to highlight, is that you need to enable this relationship as well for the Web API. Because if I will run the code right now, we will get an error. Actually, let me run the code and we will see. So let me upload the portal back to the system and we will see. Now don't mind the errors. This is because of the table permissions that I created and deleted. Nothing important. Okay, let me clear the cache. And go back to the page. Okay, great. So let's say I want to have time travel 101. So let's hit attend. Okay, we see that something went wrong. So this is because, and if we download error logs and open them with Visual Studio Code, we can see that attribute hero course session task course session here cannot be found for the table hero course session. And this is because that we didn't enable this relationship for the Web API. But you can say, okay, how can I enable it, right? We have this setting for the fields and not for relationships. So how can I do it? Well, actually, it's not just for fields. Despite being named Web API / entity name / fields, it actually will work with relationships that you need for deep insert. So what we need to do is we need to copy our relationship. We need to find our site setting for the hero course session and here on this entity, which is a parent entity, we need to add this relationship in the list of fields, and then hit save, and then we will clear the cache, then we will refresh the page. And we'll hit attend.
Hey, Oleksandr.
Yep.
If we're doing many-to-many an intersect entity, how do we enable Web API? Is the name of the relationship the table, if you will?
This is a good question. I actually didn't test it on for many-to-many. It works for one-to-n and one, but for many-to-many, I didn't test it. So genuinely, I don't know.
Okay, we'll look it up then.
Yeah. Okay, it didn't clean up. Why? Let's clear the cache again. Did I save this? Yeah, I saved it. Okay. Come on. Why not cleaning up? Let me check the error. Maybe something else is wrong. Maybe oh yeah, it's different error. Hero student cannot be found. Yeah, just a second. I think I renamed the fields for the session on the course task. So the main error going away, but actually, let me go to okay, and we have student, which is here, student, which is correct. So why it didn't work? Let me check here, student. So this is funny. Okay, this is getting interesting. Let me update and check the code. Yeah, proper. So something with my entity permissions. It's always fun to have a demo presentation live because this thing can happen. So yes, this one is correct. Interesting. Okay, let's remove this one just to create a sample task and see what it will say in this case. I think I messed something up in my relationship. Anyway, let's clear the cache. Okay, done. So there was something with the field name. So if we go back to the system and go to the course sessions and go to my time travel 101, we can see, oh no, not the course session. We could see that we have course session task created as a related entity. So I didn't find any documentation on how many levels deep you can get with this one, so you can play with it. I tried to go as far as 5 levels. It worked, so you can just play with it. It's pretty cool, and also I would say it's really simplified the creation, especially if you know how many related records you can create. And also you can create more than one record. So if I would like to say, for example, I want to create a couple of tasks, right? So you can pass them, because as you can see, this is array. So we can say, okay, I want to have additional task pass for our user, right? So, and it will create 2 things. So this is really useful, and I can see scenarios where you can really benefit from it without needing to, create a lot of additional overhaul. Okay, let's go with the targets, this one. Okay, and let's go back. We have targets, of course. And as you can see, it created 2 tasks, etc. And this works for standard entities. You can create nodes like this. You can create standard task, etc. So, however, one thing, you need to enable it for WebAPI, and also user need to have proper permissions to create those. So don't forget about table permissions, because if user, for example, have permission to create course sessions, but didn't have permission to create tasks for those course sessions, it will fail. And you will see an error. Okay, any questions so far?
Not for me.
I don't think we have any. I mean, I have one, but it's mostly conceptual.
Okay.
We'll wait for it for the end.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay, one last thing before we move from our web API to site settings and snippets is I would like to talk about the delete operation. And we will not have a demo, but we will just look in the documents. And I would like to point out a couple of things to you. So for delete operations, we have delete a single property value. So if you would like to clean up a field, you didn't pass a null value, you perform a delete operation with the name of the field that you would like to clean up. However, this will not work if you will work with a lookup field. For that one, you need to have a remove a reference to a table for a single valid navigation property. So basically, after the lookup name, you need to add $ref. So this is one thing that I would like to point out to you. Also, if you would like to remove like this lookup that is business required, you will obviously have an error because it cannot be null. So just recall that. If you will use WebAPI tool from external box from Omar, for delete operation, it shows just this basic value. So for standard fields. So, you know, just be aware for lookup fields that you would need to add this $ref thing that will clean up the value. Okay, this is the end of the WebAPI talk, and now we will move to more, I would say, settings part of the things in the portals, because a lot of the things in the portal you can achieve with site settings and with content snippets. And there is a lot of them, like the standard page in the documentation about configuring site settings, mention just a couple of them. So there is a lot of them, and they can have multiple values like true, false, or just the name or list of fields, etc. And there is a lot of them, like literally a lot of them. Like luckily, some of them are simplified. Like for authentication, before this new simplified experience, you would need to go and create necessary properties, and you still need to do for some things. But generally, Microsoft did a good job of adding UI for it. However, not all of them are easily available, and not all of them are documented. So yeah, so I created a GitHub repository called PowerApps Portal Site Settings and Snippets, and you can just scan the QR code, and also the link will be shared later in the chat. So this repository contains a list of little known and hidden content snippets and site settings, and it's been maintained by me and also my friend Oliver, Oliver Rodriguez, who you might know. He also writes a lot about PowerApps portals, and you also can contribute to it. So if you know some site settings and some content snippet that is not really well known or is not nowhere near found in the documentation, then just create a PR request and we will review it. And if it's really working, we'll approve it. And let's see what we actually can do with some of those snippets, how they work and how they behave and what we can achieve. So I would like to start with one of the most useful, in my opinion, snippets that I'm frequently using, and you might also know about them. So it's a head bottom. content snippet. So this snippet allows you to add content to the end of the head tag, which is really important, especially when you want to have a content that need to be on all pages and especially need to be in the head tag of the page. This content snippet is HTML type. So when you create it, you just pass some HTML code, which is really useful. One of the scenarios that I commonly saw in different blogs, and so for example, it was written by Oliver, is about using head bottom snippet to maintain a meta tags. So meta to allow you to show different pictures, open graph, etc. So it's really useful. And I personally use it to add different JavaScript files like Xrm Portal.js, and also some styling files that I would like to be on all pages. Now, one thing that you might also saw is head fonts, and it also allows to add HTML code as a content snippet. And the question that I saw sometimes is, what's the difference between those two? Well, the clear answer is that this one will add at the end of the head tag, and this one somewhere before that. So what I will show you right now is ADX Studio Portals code. It's Community Edition. This is basically long gone ADX Studio Portals that it was predecessor for our PowerApps portals. However, it's still really useful to inspect, and especially if you like to go to code and see some things, this is really useful. And also this is one of the way how you can find some of those settings and some of those content snippets, because they are used here. So if we inspect this code, and this is default master page, this is basically the main page that is a default template for all other pages. And if we inspect it, we can see that here, almost at the end of the head tag, we can see html.snippet literal head bottom. So basically here is where the code that you added to that content snippet will be inserted before the localization, but at the end of the head tag. And if we will scroll a bit to the top, you can see that there is head fonts snippet that can be used to insert some additional information that need to be a bit on top. I don't actually use head fonts. I usually store my fonts in the bootstrap min CSS file if needed. But if you need something that be a bit more on top of the head and render a bit faster, you can use this one as well. There is no limitations or nothing that's why you cannot use it. So let's see how it actually works by adding some code to head bottom. So if we will go to our portal and we will go to content snippets, let's see if we have it. Did I add something? Okay, I did add something. So this one does not exist. Now, this is actually quite common that you will not be able to find content snippets in your system that we're mentioning in my repository or in anyone else, and this is completely fine. You can easily just create them, and there is no problem in that. So let's say I want to add, I don't know, let's, for this particular example, just add some scripts. It will basically be console log. And yeah, in reality, you will add something much more meaningful here, but you know, this is just an example. So when we'll add here, now let's explore our page without refreshing it. So we'll see that if we'll go to the head of the page, we will not see any additional script tags except for this one, but this is a standard from Microsoft, and this is also resources. So nothing really special in here. Now let me refresh the cache. And it's a page. As you can see, it added our console log hello script at the end of the head. And again, you know, I would advise you to use it for some additional functionality, like adding links, CSS, and if necessary, some JavaScript. If you're adding JavaScript, you don't need to execute immediately, just add async if you can. Okay, this one is pretty straightforward. One of the other things how you can find different content snippets is actually just log into the portal as an admin. And you can always see like these things like edit, style, all courses, etc. This is basically showing you some editable part of the page. And for example, for this one, this is the title of the page. So this doesn't, it's not a content snippet. But for this one, mobile header, it is. And if we go to another page, so for example, sign in page, we can see that there's much more content snippets, and I'm pretty sure that you are aware of a lot of them, like changing the text for local sign-in, which I did in a lot of things, and changing the external sign-in heading, and changing the name of the username label, etc. Now, there are still some limitations. For example, there is no content snippets for sign-in button or for forget your password. You still need to use the JavaScript code to change them. But in a lot of cases, there is, and you might just not be aware of them. By the way, if anybody knows content snippets for any of those buttons, highly appreciate it if you will add it to a GitHub repo.
For the sign-in buttons, you mean?
Yeah, for sign in and for forgot your password. This one, not the big sign in button, because that one we will cover next. Unfortunately,
I
this
think I have
text is
those.
different. Okay, now let's talk about sign-in buttons, and not that sign-in button, but the sign-in for your standard header in here. So this again, this one might be familiar for you. Content snippets, links logout for sign-out button, and links for login for standard sign-in button. So let's, for this example, change links logout to see how it will work. And basically what it will change this sign out text. So again, going to content snippets, passing this content snippet, and let's say it should be the type of text, and saying, okay, leave the party. Okay. And again, let's clear the cache. And let's refresh the page. And as you can see, it changed to leave the party instead of standard sign out. So this is again really useful if you need to change some standard text and in sign out. Now, be aware of one thing: this will work if you're using the standard header template, or if you modified standard header template. Because if we will check the standard header template, what we will see is for sign in, sign out button, they are using this snippet. So we will see it in here, snippets links logout and snippets links login. So they're using this one. Now, one thing that I would like to say about the localization that you need to be aware of with this particular snippet is that if you change the name, it will grab this one, and if you change it to something else, you would need to change and create content snippets for all languages that you were using, because it's the standard one will be translated by the system, but this one needs to be translated by you. So don't forget about that one. The next thing that we will look into is, again, our sign-in login page. And we will talk about navigation text. So as I showed, a lot of things can be easily customized, and you just need to highlight the text to see it. But one of the things that a lot of people want to customize but just cannot find a way is the tab names. So sign in, register, and redeem invitation. So you will not find it in official documentation, but in old community portals, there was a hint on how to use it. So this is it. So you need to use a setting account now redeem for redeem invitation, account now sign in for sign in text, and account now register for register section. So let's change sign in, and so to change this one, and it will not change the icon. So the icon is here by default. It will not go away, just the text will be changed. So let's create our content snippet. And let's restart. Okay, let's clear the cache. And as you can see, it was updated to start. So it's quite easy. In most tutorials that I found out, they are still using JavaScript approach, but I think this is much more convenient to use. Now let's talk about profile page. And profile page is the thing that it's a pain for modification. It's one of the things how I'm always finding the standard PowerApps portal, even if they were modified beyond belief, is the profile page, because it's pretty hard to customize. Of course, there is a way how you can do it, especially using JavaScript to hide show things, but in general, it stays pretty much the same. And again, we can find a lot of information here, like profile from legend to change your information, and profile marketing preference, so to change the text. Now, one of the most common questions is how we can hide this, because we don't want to ask for marketing information. And there is a convenient site setting called Show Marketing Options Panel, which basically show hide option panel, which is, I would say, the name is pretty straightforward. There is also options to edit the text for the security navigation. However, you cannot hide it by itself. So with these content snippet, you can just change the text in here. One snippet that I would like to highlight is the simple our submit or update by default button. So we have a content snippet called profile submit button text, which is basically self-explanatory. So it will just update the label for this button, which can be useful in some sort of scenarios. Now we will not change it because I would say it's quite straightforward. Now let's go to tracking code, and this is one of the, I would say, interesting content snippets. So as you know, on the portal, if you go to portal management app, you can enable traffic analysis. And this basically allows you to edit any snippet that you would like for any analytics provider, like Google Analytics or Azure Application Insights, and it will be added to all the pages for your portal, usually in footer. So, and this field, what it will do, it will create a content snippet for you called traffic code, and it will a tracking code, and it will populate it with whatever you put in here. So again, let's get with snippet script. Okay, so if we hit save, okay, so the system should create it. So let's refresh the page to see. Okay, it's stored. Now if we go to content snippets and search for tracking code, we will see that it will be created, and I think it's created twice by mistake. One of the things that I would like to highlight, and why I'll bring this up, is it's quite often that unfortunately, if you update the code in the enable traffic analysis tab and hit save, it will not be updated into tracking code actual snippet. So if you go to the portal, you will still see the old code. I had this problem before, and basically knowing about this content snippet solve it. So usually after the initial creation, I just go here in the content snippets and update the code directly here, which will ensure that the code will be present on the portal and you can use it. If we now, let's delete this one. If we will go right now to the portal, clears the cache, and update the page. We can see that the code was added and it's at the bottom of our page. So it will add this analytics code to the bottom of the page. Fun fact, you can actually, it's just a standard content snippet that put everything at the bottom of the page. So you can use it not just for analytics code, but to some codes that need to be at the end of the body of the page. So some scripts, etc. I would say it's not recommended or officially supported, but again, it's just a content snippet, so there is no harm. It's not used in any weird way. So you can just use it as is, because there is a situation when, especially if you're using some big JavaScript library that can hit performance, you will add it to the bottom of the page. And now we will talk about lookup models, one of the fanciest things on the portal that is the same. And basically, you all work with it, right? So this is our good old lookups. So if we will edit any of our course sessions, this is the things that you can always see. This is a standard lookup, and when you hit, you will see this this window. It's always the same. And you know, a lot of you, and included, wanted to change and modify things. And the usual approach is to use some kind of JavaScript code, which is workable, but some things can be changed without, you know, writing a code, just using site settings. So first thing is the number of records in this grid. By default, system will have this to 10. But for example, I would like to have a bigger page or a smaller page. How can I do it? Well, this site setting will be in handy. So portal lookup model grid page size. And again, all of these site settings can be found in my GitHub repository. So don't be afraid if you forget the name, etc. You can just find it there. So this controls the page size for lookup model grids, and this will control it for every grid. So unfortunately, you cannot say, for example, for this lookup, I want 10 records, and for that lookup, I want 2 records per page. No, this is a setting that will affect all records. So let's go and let's create a site setting. And let's say I want the page to be just 3 records, right? Because I have 5 there. Okay, let's clear the cache and see what will happen. Okay, so as you can see right now, we have 2 pages instead of 1 and only 3 records per page. Again, can be quite useful. Just remember that this is site settings that affects all lookups. So you cannot enable it just for some things and disable for others. Now, another thing that is, I would say, not as useful, but just interesting to see is that you can actually control the size of this window. Now, not actually in pixels, but just relatively. There is a site setting called model size, which has 2 values, large and small. I don't actually see any application why you would like to scale down all the lookup models on your website, but again, it might be useful. So let's see how it will work. So let's create a new site setting. And and we want it to be small. Okay, so remember this big size, and now let's refresh the page. And voila, it is really small. So again, I don't see any real implication where you would like to use it, but especially if you have just a small number of lookups, it might be useful for somebody, but just interesting to have it as is. Okay, let's delete it and let's move back to our standard model because it's much more comfortable. Now we are getting to content snippets. And again, this is for portal lookup model because we still can change quite a few things in here. So one of the things that I often hear is how I can change this text to something else. Because, people want to see maybe some different message. Again, you cannot change it per record. So these settings will apply to all models. So lookup records, I would say, is pretty good in general, but if you do need to change it, you have an option. So it's called portal lookup model title, and this is the text for lookup model. So if we create a new content snippet and say let's say you want to tell it select records instead of lookup records, and it clears the cache. As you can see, it says select records. So it might be pretty useful. Another thing that I usually see is how to change this tooltip for the search. Because, it is useful, but sometimes you want to show another text. And again, this is applicable for all lookup windows. So if you want to change it, try to come up with something that can be used and applied everywhere. So, and this we have portal lookup model create search tooltip text. So this one, let's change it to something else. Say simplify all the text and say use as wildcard. Oh, forgot to use the cache. So as you can see, it's much smaller and much more readable, but you can replace it with whatever you want. Again, there is much more things that we can do. So for example, this search text placeholder, we can modify it as well. So there is portal lookup model search placeholder. So we can replace it with search here, etc. One of the things that I actually remove in some of the instances was the remove value, because sometimes it's not as obvious what was selected, what remove value actually means. So you can actually change the name of this button as well. So we have an option called remove value button text. So again, let's create a new content snippet. And did select. Now I know it's not deselecting, it's actually removing as a value, but in this example, let's just name it deselect, just to see that it works. As you can see, it was renamed to deselect, which is really useful. And again, as with other content snippets, language dependent. So if you have multiple languages, you would need to create a content snippet in the respective language if you would like to maintain the value that you provided, or it will set the default value provided by the system, which will be removed value, etc. So there is also things that we can modify in here. So we can modify select button, we can modify cancel button, which is, I would say, pretty obvious. But one of the things that I like is also that we can bring more to even the loading message or the error message. So there is a snippet called a loading message. And basically, this is a HTML that will be shown when this is loading, especially when there is a lot of records, it will be visible. And to maintain consistency of the portal, especially if you have really strict CDIs, which I had sometimes, it's really good that you can replace the standard message with something more custom that will much more outline your portal. Same thing with the error message. So it will show the error completing request message if something went wrong, there is no permissions, but you can replace this with something send email to this or etc. So make it much more usable. One thing that I found interesting is that there is 2 error message options. So lookup model default error message and create. So I see users a bit confused what's happening. So this one is for model create. So this one is for the create in here, and it will be shown. So you will see the name and created on, but you won't see data. And here, well, the grid option will appear if the error occurred. And the default error message is for the model itself. So if you wrongly configure lookup, or your entity, you don't have permission to see the records, or there is problem with the lookup, you will see that message. So this is the difference. The grid one is internally here for grid, and the model one is in general for the model itself. And one last thing that I would like to point out in here, and we are done. I try to make it as fast as possible today, is that you can also modify the empty message. Now, it's pretty common that, you know, the user didn't have the records, or if they were not created, and the default empty message, there are no records to display, I would say is pretty straightforward, but again, can be extended. You can include the link, etc., to make it much more user-friendly and much more usable. Okay, yes, that's what's it for today. I think I covered all I wanted. I tried to make it as fast as possible because last time I a bit overblown. So, do you have any questions? And if you have questions, ideas, etc., just ask them in the chat or raise your hand. Oh, I for some reason cannot see chat. So Victor, if you will see the chat,
yeah, this will make it easier for us to see the chat on Teams, right?
Yeah.
We don't have very many comments. I put some comments myself, which is like a question / comment that I had.
Okay.
And what it is I mean, I anticipate that Microsoft will make WebAPI read operations available soon.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense. But
Yeah.
when they do, and if they do you see it as an improvement or like an extra feature in building your patches and posts for create and update operations? What I mean by that is you showed us how you can embed the related record creation or update in one call. if the read capabilities of WebAPI would be available, I would assume that you could embed some of the commands in the same call as well, right?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely when read will be available, it'll be, I would say, a huge deal because, you know, we are still using web templates and creating our mini web APIs to retrieve records, and being able to have a read operation will change things. So for example, you build a custom form, right? Because of the process or something else, you need to build it. And you build custom grid, subgrid, or you added a custom subgrid to the page, right? And if you're using web templates, that's the issue because caching, right? Caching is still a thing. And if you create something and retrieve through web templates, it will cache the data and you might not get the latest results that you created.
I see.
And when the read will come to play, they will handle the cache issue. So you will get the latest result. And that's why I'm waiting for read because, you know, it will allow to extend a lot of things.
Oh, that's awesome. I was thinking about read just saving us time and going between hops, you know, web template, have to build web template to give us the result that we need in JSON format and whatnot. But this is cool. Yeah, this is really cool. Mind-boggling, I guess. The other comment I had, I mean, if nobody has, I don't see any hands up. I may be missing folks here. Let me look at the list. Yeah, there are no hands up. Because there are no hands up, then I'll talk a little bit more. Um, you presented a bunch of site content snippets, if you will. And then I want to show folks one way also to find some of the hidden content snippets. Of course, I mean, the best thing is to go to Oleksandr's repo and see the details there. I mean, it saves you a lot of time. But if for some reason you go to his repo and you still can't find information about some hidden site setting or something that you assume there is a site setting for, this is another way. I mean, it's a little bit of exploratory, but it still can provide still information for you. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick here, Oleksandr.
Yep.
And then we can look at that. Hopefully I have the right screen. I do now. So this particular repo here, you see a browser window?
Yep.
Okay, let me try to get this Teams thing to go away. Okay, so this is the Portals Community Edition. Okay, this is the last drop. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was the things that I was showing with the hack bottom. I downloaded this one locally. This repository. Yeah, this is good old EDX Studios. Yes.
That's right. So this is the last drop from Microsoft before they went completely SaaS. So a lot of the information here may not work for you, but there is still a lot of this stuff that does work. Okay, so if for some reason, let's say you are on a website and then you want to find out how to change the name of the sign-in button, for example. Okay, you can either download this code and navigate there, and if you download, you of course could use, I mean, if you open on VS Code or Visual Studio, you can do a global search for a specific content and then find your snippet nearby there. Or if you know your ways through portals, I mean, I've been through the sample code multiple times in my career, so I know where to go. So for this particular example, we are looking at the view for logging local, right? Then you can scroll down, you can see a few things. You have the account signing, heading, and then you would have the label if your site is enabled for email being used as the username. If not, here's the label for username. And then I think you made a comment on the
Forgot password.
For the button. Yeah.
Yep.
For the buttons.
Oh, send in local button text. Oh, I missed that one.
That's Great. There. I put it on the comments here, a few, but maybe we'll get some time in July. I'll take some vacation time. I'll try to put some of this stuff on your on your repo so that it's got additional stuff. But that's the way I would do. And then you have things for the other stuff as well. So if you step back accounts, then you have other views. If you look at logging external, logging failure, then you can dive in logging Facebook, and you can dive in and see a few more. Again, there is no guarantee that what's available here is still at play on the SaaS version, but knowing the code base well will give you some indications on what to do. What I personally use that was hidden for me, I had to dive into it, was the page copy for what was it? The registration page. So you can add page copy, you can add a lot of HTML content, and within the page copy, you can do some of JavaScript to move components around. So I did that, and then the information is here if you dive in. So if you were to go registration, then there are snippets here.
Yep.
Register page copy. Invitation code alert, so on and so forth. So you can find your way as you dive in. But yeah, there's a lot here to document. Maybe yeah, I'll try to do that at some point in July to contribute to your repo, Oleksandr, and to make things a little even more richer, more than what it already is. Folks, I think we are on top of the hour. Oleksandr, thank you so much for your time and for the content you presented today. The Portals Spider-Man has shown his secret. So we may do another one. I think there will be an update on the Web API shortly here. I don't know which month yet, but maybe we should do an extended one when that is available. One thing that I'm thinking about doing before I go on vacation is doing a recording on the VS Code extension. So I'm gonna be bugging you for help there. If you see a bunch of messages and email, please don't get upset. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time here with us. We'll see you next week. Oh, by the way, next week, the next presenter is Zarped. He's a fresh MVP, the latest one in the pack. He's going to be presenting from India, so it's very late for him. He asked me to do it 1 hour in advance. So next week I'll be sending information about it, but we're gonna meet 1 hour earlier. So I don't know what time it is this meeting in your time zone, but it's going to be 1 hour before. And he'll be talking about ALM for Portals. He has recently released a VS Code extension for Portals ALM. So I'm excited to see what he's got to say. So we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Oleksandr. Thanks everybody who's in this call. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oleksandr, it's brilliant. Again, thank you. Bye. Bye.